So what we're going to learn now is how to distinguish the different vertebrae from each other. So what we are looking at here is a cervical vertebrae. And cervical vertebrae are distinguished by having these holes here on the sides in their transverse processes. So those holes are called the transverse foramens. And these are the only vertebrae that have those. Also, what we're going to see with the cervical vertebrae, these are neck vertebrae, is they are going to have the spinous process that runs fairly parallel. They are going to be fairly smaller than the other vertebrae. Now let's take a look at a couple of particular cervical vertebrae that we want you to know. And the first here is the atlas. So this right here is the atlas. This is what sits and holds actually our head up. So these parts here attach to the occipital condyle, and you can see that they do, like all of the cervical vertebrae, have transverse foramen. The next here is the axis. So this is the axis. Once again, it has transverse foramen. And so the axis, the atlas sits atop the axis and spins like so, and this is how we turn our head. But also what we're seeing here is on the axis this structure right here, and this structure is called the dens. So the axis is the only vertebrae that has that structure like that. So that is called the dens. So these are two specific cervical vertebrae that we want you to know. This is a typical cervical vertebrae. We can separate that from this guy right here. This is a thoracic vertebrae. So this is a thoracic vertebrae. So on the thoracic vertebrae, we're going to see little indentions here, and you see a little indention there. And those are called costal demifacets. And those are for the head of a rib to attach to. Those are costal demifacets. So this is a thoracic vertebrae. And what we see with thoracic is that typically their spinous process goes in a downward direction. As you can see, thoracic are kind of the middle of our back. Compare that to the cervical vertebrae here. The last group of vertebrae are the lumbar vertebrae. So lumbar vertebrae have a very large body here. These are the vertebrae that make up our lower back. A very stout spinous process here as well. And so these guys kind of remind me of certain animals here. This is a cervical vertebrae. Once again, it kind of reminds me of a dachshund. So looking at you, it's kind of like a dachshund. The thoracic vertebrae, this is to the side, and this is it's looking at our back here. But they kind of remind me, they kind of look like a giraffe in appearance. And lastly, those lumbar vertebrae, this is what it looks like on the sides here. This is a frontal view here, and they kind of remind me of the look of a moose. Okay, so, and that's one of the ways that helped me distinguish these guys.